Hello, welcome to CSS 299 on Monday, the 19th. Sorry for the short break. I went and closed the door to this room so that we wouldn't be bothered. Okay, so a couple of things. Right at the beginning of, right this weekend, I sent everyone copies of their second draft of their resumes and cover letters with some comments. All of you have done a great job on those. There's a little bit of tweaking can turn them into really strong documents that will help you in the future. Two things, and I'm going to be sending out an email to everyone in the class as well. Two things. We have this week and next, we're midway through the class. Next week, we will be doing the mock interviews. That's part one of your final exam. I will email you. We'll have to set up a schedule, and I need to get some idea from each of you when you are available. I have a couple of people, actually three, that are willing to participate. One of them is only available Monday after 11 a.m. and Tuesday between 10 and 12:30. So that's next week, the 26th and 27th. The other that is directly confirmed is pretty open and able to accommodate schedules. The final person is someone who's a little iffy on the technology of trying to do this not face-to-face, but is willing to pitch in, which I appreciate no end. So I think we can plan on doing that. We'll have to do these pretty much, I think, as telephone or some form of online. And I'm going to be encouraging an online if people have it, possibly with having people get their own free Zoom account and use that and record it. The purpose of the mock interview is to have you go through this process, and although I'm sure all of you have had interviews before, what we want to do is really try to really make this a really top flight interview for you and an experience, and give you some feedback on it. I will be providing to the interviewers your resumes, your cover letter, a copy of your job posting that you're applying for, and a feedback form for me, for them to use to evaluate you, and that's how you will be graded. So be aware that that's why I want you to clean up your resumes and cover letters and get them back to me so that I can include them in that package to the interviewers. It's a little different for us. Usually when we have this as a strictly on-ground class, I have the interviewers come in and meet in a room with you and conduct the interviews. This is a little different, and I don't know how we're going to do it. Some of you may have to be telephone interviews, in which case that is obviously not ideal, because a part of an interview is, what do you look like? How do you come across in your interview? So I will, as I said, be sending you a copy I will be sending you an email and asking you for some input as to when is a good time for you. All right. Let's talk about what else is going on this week. We'll be meeting again on Wednesday, but I'd like you to get started on a couple of these things now. So I'm looking now at the week 3 module of the class, and want to look at this first assignment, which is a keyword replacement exercise. What you will want to do is select the keywords. Now, what are keywords? Keywords really are exact requirements that people have for a job. So if they want you, let's just say we're talking about someone who's taking their degree in business. If the position specifies that they want 2 years experience marketing some product, then that's a key word, 2 years experience. They also may require, if you're in the IT field, they may require that you be capable of programming in the Java language. That's a key word. Any specifics that they line out. In the medical area, they may want experience with phlebotomy. They may want experience with billing and coding or something like that. So what we want to do is place you there. We want to make sure those words appear not only in your resume, but also in your cover letter. Now, there are several reasons for this. One of them is the way jobs these days seem to be handled at a lot of companies, which is they put your resume and cover letter through a filter, some filter software that searches for those keywords. If those keywords aren't there, it's rejected. It doesn't matter if you are the perfect candidate for the job. If you don't have the right words, the hiring person will never see you. We haven't yet gotten to the idea of hiring by artificial intelligence, but what we have is a culling mechanism based on a crude form of AI in which they're looking for the key words. Now, Alex, you are interested in AI. That might be something you want to think about, just a thought. But the issue for all of us here is how do we get noticed? It's all well and good to have a great resume. It's all well and good to have a really good cover letter, and all of you have those right now. But the question is, and again, this is why we go through and customize our resume for every single job. Customize our cover letter for every single job. We want those keywords to be out there. If they don't find those keywords, they're not going to sit and ponder and think, well, this looks really good and really looks like the same thing. They won't, because they're going to have a number of applications and they'll use whatever excuse they can to cull that list down to smaller. So those keywords will be then replaced on your resume. And even though it doesn't specify it here, on your cover letter, because they'll look at the cover letter first, for the most part. They may not always, but it's useful to have those keywords there. That way, if they go through an AI resume filter, then what they're going to get is someone has this person has this set of our requirements. And while very few HR professionals are going to say, we won't talk to anyone except people who have every single thing we want, if they want 10 and you have one, you're not going to get interviewed, probably. So what I want you to do is that's part of your week's work. Go through, highlight the keywords on the job posting, and make them red. You can do that, or you can use the word highlighter function. And then on your resume, and then look to see what those keywords might be that might have synonyms, similar other terms that describe the same thing. Don't assume the AI or the HR person is going to be able to read your application or your resume and make the assumption that, oh, this word actually is the same as our keyword. They're not going to think that hard on it. And in fact, if they're HR and you're in a technical field like IT, they may not even know it. So we don't want to take chances. This is an exercise we want you to do because I want you to do this with every job you apply for. Now, ideally, you go out and get a job. Wonderful. I hope that happens. But factually, you probably have to apply for several in order to get even an interview, because there are lots of people out there. I recently read that it looked like there were more jobs than there were people being advertised. And the problem is, of course, that may be true in some areas, but if it's not an area that you're interested in, then it's irrelevant that there are millions of jobs out there of a variety of sort, and many of them can be, flipping burgers at McDonald's for all I know. But the not that there's anything dishonorable about that, but it's not exactly a highly professional job for you guys who are coming out of here. So what I want you to do is keep that list. You've got to get through that keyword. So go through and modify. Keep keep a copy of your current resume after you make whatever revisions that I've suggested and that you agree with. Keep a copy of that and then make a new copy with the keywords in it. And there's a couple of ways. Many of you are going to have the keywords. We've talked about that. So many of you will have some of them, but go through and really look at the job description for those key words. And as I say, the keywords are especially things that they require. The must-have list. In some cases, that's going to be certain amount of experience. In some cases, that's going to be having done direct patient care. In some cases, that's going to be maybe experience using MySQL or any other kind of thing that is an absolute. That they say the candidate must have this experience. Those are obviously keywords. And then the nice to haves are also keywords. Nice to haves really raise you up over the people that don't have the nice to have or don't have enough knowledge about how to do these things to make sure that they use this strategy of replacing replacing terms to match the specific job posting. So that's that assignment. So next, let's go back here. Star stories. Remember, I talked about this a bit last week. Star, situation, task, action, results. Okay. In other words, you're building up a story for your interview. As I said last week, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to be asked about a time you solved a problem, overcame a difficulty, did something that really helped the business. So it's really something all of you have done to some extent. Maybe the situation was that you were, working on a Boy Scout ranch one summer, and there was a situation with some aspect of working at the ranch. I pick on that because I did that when I was a kid in high school. But the situation might be we have a problem with runoff on a certain field. Okay, so you were asked to fix that problem. So that was the task situation. There was a major runoff, and we get some flooding into the tent area of the grounds. Task: what do you need to do that? What work? What could improve things? So you might say that digging a ditch, a diversion ditch, or something might do it. Action: what did you do? And then what was the result? Note that I didn't say it saved a lot of money. I just said it changed the direction of where the water was going and stopped flooding the area where we had people pitching tents or living in bunkhouses or whatever else. So it doesn't have to be something that made your company bazillions of dollars. If you do have a story like that, by gosh, tell it. But if you don't have a story like that, all of us have done something. Had a student who, in the military, was given a task of getting some extra space in storage facilities that was filled up with a bunch of stuff, and he had to find some place to put it. And he had to get a crew to do it. And he was given a short period of time, and he worked out his own way of getting it done, and the result was that they got what they were after. Again, what's the benefit? It certainly didn't make the Army any money, but it certainly freed up some space so that they could use it for more important uses. And he went and recruited a bunch of people to help him. So, just what you've done, how you've done it. And as I say, it doesn't have to be anything that makes you look like, a superhero. But if you have it, of course, that's good to use. And think broadly. It doesn't have to, as I said, it doesn't have to be something that makes the company a bunch of money or even saves the company a bunch of money. It might be something that changed morale in the workplace. Just a lot of different things. So think about that. I'd like to see 2 of those. And so what you want to do is write this up and submit it to the submission, the entry box. You may want to record it. I hope I can play it. You may want to, or just upload it as a Word document. So let's get that done and be able to talk about those maybe later in the week or next week. So that assignment is really about getting you prepared for the inevitable question in the interview. If you've already been through an interview and you know the story you want to use, well, it's a little easier at this point. But please send me 2 of them, not just 1, because you may decide, you may actually I've actually been asked a second time that question in an interview process, not by the same interviewer. I always assume, by the way, that if I'm being interviewed by a number of different people in an organization, they're going to share notes. And if you tell the same story, the conclusion they're going to come to is that you only have one story. That's probably not true, but that's the conclusion they're going to come to. So you want a couple of these, and maybe even put a couple more in your back pocket just in case if you have a really good interview and have to deal with this. So let's go back and look at the next one. Text resume exercise. The text, the reason we do this, quite frankly, and most of you can do this with your eyes closed, I'm sure, but the reason we do this is because many of the HR systems, if they get a resume, they will run it into again their resume machine, their resume engine, and it will extract the information that they're looking for and place it in a format, usually on their own form, so that they know what they're looking for and they know where to look for it. So what you want to do is just convert your resume to text style, and that in Word, that is to save it as a TXT document or plain text document, and from there just submit it to the Dropbox, or to the submission box. You can look at the Joe student text example. Let's pull that up right now. It will look funny because, of course, the text example is going to be a very plain font. It will not have a lot of formatting. So what you want, this is what it will look like on this one. The summary of qualifications, a list of these things, and a few hints when you're going back in. This also applies to structuring the resume. The number of 5 points related to the position is not an absolute, just several. The first one needs to really point to the skills that are really being required, and every one of them needs to express some sort of key skill related to the job. Not a list of 5 words, but an opportunity here. The transferable skills can be put in here as well. Customer service experience, for instance, adaptability, that sort of thing. And then prioritize them. Also a place to include certifications. Alex, you have noted in yours that you have Microsoft Office Specialist certification. That is going to be really, that would be important to have on this list. Education. So here is how you deal with education. In this example, what you've done in your resumes is good too. So, and your employment, etc. Be spare in your wordings. Look at your wording. People who teach writing, and I mean business writing as well as creative writing. Not that business writing can't be creative, but I think you know the difference here. But in terms of writing, fewer words that convey the idea, the better. Simpler words that convey the idea without being insulting to the reader is also better. You don't want to show off your vocabulary of 120,000 usable words. Most of us get along quite well. In fact, in the business world, I don't know if any of you have heard of a language that has been given the name Globish. It's basically a 1,500 word language that was designed to be used in business settings over the entire world. It's mostly based on English, but the thing is that the verbs and nouns are not conjugated or declined. They're very straightforward. So, and most of us have a working vocabulary for most of our lives of 1,500 to 2,000 words. By working vocabulary, I mean that which we're using every day. Our full vocabulary can be much, much broader. Most of us have a much broader, complete vocabulary. But this is not the place to use a lot of polysyllabic terms unless they are terms that are used in the field that you're applying. In medicine, you might want to say phlebotomy rather than blood draw. Okay, simple. Again, look at everything you write. Is this word needed? Is all of this needed? What can I pull out of here and not lose anything important? And so look at everything that way. Cutting is a good strategy. So this is what it will come out looking like: a very plain, straight up, no bold, nothing font, probably 12 point if that's what you've started with. Again, this is to go into the resume engine. Interview questions. Here we go. This is our discussion for the week. Okay. So what we have is you have sections 1 and 2. So what you want to do is choose 5 of these 20 common questions, and then craft your own answers. Okay, so there are some behavioral questions. There are some intentional questions. There are some questions about your personality and about the type of people you work with. Some of them are open-ended. Why should I hire you? Because I'm the best candidate for the job. That might be the right answer, given that you have to judge answers sometimes by the person you're talking about. The problem is that's not a great answer because you don't know who else they're interviewing. So why should I hire you? Point up your skills. Skills, qualifications. You should hire me because I'm an expert Java and C++ programmer. All right? You should hire me because I am a great phlebotomist and I know all about doing common laboratory tests, such as glucose tests, INRs, etc. You should hire me because my business background makes it possible for me to actually run your office and understand all of the needs of running this office. Tell me about do you plan to continue your education? This is a tricky one. And the reason I say that is that if you say yes, one of the responses might be, well, how long do you plan to stay here then? Your response to that might be, well, I'll stay here and pursue my education while I'm working. I've been doing that. So you might think about that. Why are you leaving your current job? you know, and in some cases that may be um, because, you know, you're graduating and you don't want to spend your life doing customer phone support. You want to do something um, a little more direct. Okay, I have to take a break. Sorry about the short break. Um, so why are you leaving your current job? Think how you want to answer that. You know, you don't want to be saying things like, "Oh, the boss was an idiot." Um, so, you know, your best answer is um, that I've done everything I can on that job, and I figure and I felt that this job would offer me a chance to expand my experience base and my abilities, something like that. Look for positive answers. Um, that may be difficult when you have you ever been fired from a job? If the answer is no, that's easy. If the answer is yes, then you need to be willing to tell the truth. If you got fired, I got fired from a job one time because my CEO, I was a vice president of a biotech company. My CEO wanted me to do something that I felt was against the company's interest. And I was working very hard at doing something that would serve the company's interest. Um, Ultimately, the CEO decided that it was more important for me to obey him than to continue working, and he asked me to leave. So um, I did. You know, when you get into a disagreement with the boss usually isn't the one who leaves. So, you know, I have to be honest about that. We did not agree on corporate strategy, and what he wanted to do, I felt was going to do more harm than good. Ultimately, he did it. Ultimately, he got fired, which, you know, I suppose I could feel happy about, but I don't. Not for that. So, part two of this, at the end of each interview, the interviewer typically asks you questions. So, make a list of questions, several of them, and have them, you know, not being in the interview, it's hard to know what specific questions you might end up thinking of during the course of the interview, especially if you go into an organization, you have to talk to two or three people. You may come away with some different questions than you can think of now. But the issue is thinking about what it is that you want to ask. If you say, well, I don't have any questions, then the response might be, oh dear, he doesn't really want this job. And so you don't want that either. But you should always be willing to ask a question, and make it something that is relevant. So that's the discussion. I'll be very interested in seeing how people handle that. So the next, body language. Okay. So I'd like you to watch Amy Cuddy's body language talk. Um, you may find some things to quibble with, Mrs. Cuddy or Ms. Cuddy, about this, but the issue is not going to be um, um, so much whether you agree with her, but what she has to say. Body language says a lot. We've all known people that you look at them, and from the way they are sitting in a chair or in a meeting, it's very, very clear that they're bored to ears. You don't want to be bored during an interview. Big mistake. Um, the second part of that is body language can convey arrogance, can convey submissiveness, it can convey um, um, calm competence, it can convey nervousness. Not unreasonable to be a little nervous in an interview, but I think what you'll find is after you get into it, the nervousness goes away and it becomes a conversation between people. So there's a lot of way that body language comes across. The and everyone needs to understand this because you really want to look as though you're confident in yourself. And sitting there with your legs crossed and your arms folded and sort of looking down, you look anything but confident in an interview. So an open stance or an open position when seated, not arms crossed, not legs crossed, but looking more like you're open to receiving ideas. Your arms, not put all together and not looking like you're trying to withdraw into yourself. There is something called the Wonder Woman stance, and I think we've all seen it. Erect, feet apart about 15 to 18 inches, flat on the ground, and arms akimbo and hands, usually fists, planted on the hips. This is a power position. Not to say that you should walk into an interview and stand there and go into the Wonder Woman position. And by the way, it can work for men too. But it's a power position, and it's one that you should practice, male and female, practice at home before going into an interview. I don't want you to stand that way in an interview because it can also be a challenging position. But what it does is it helps you develop that picture of yourself as competent, controlled, with it, and ready to go, without sounding arrogant or aggressive or any other way. So think about that. Body language is a science in and of itself. There are people that can look at a person and just study them for a little bit and get a really good handle on their personality and their approach to the world simply by the way they stand, walk, and move. You should always be looking your interviewer in the eyes. Don't try to stare them down, but don't look off to one side or don't stare constantly. You can look around a little bit, but look them in the face. Look at them and let them see you. Because what you want to do is come across as a person who is going to contribute, is open, is also willing to do the job and to stand up for themselves. If you go in and you fold in and you look around everywhere else, then that's not good. Now, I realize that people I have no idea about most of you. I've only met Bree in this class. So I have no idea about any of you, but I will tell you that people that are somewhere on the autism spectrum, and the autism spectrum is a very, very broad set of behavioral and personality traits. A lot of people that are on the autism spectrum have a hard time looking people in the eye. If you're one of those, please practice. Learn how to do this. Learn to look people in the eye. Start by looking at yourself in the mirror, and don't study the mole on your cheek or the cleft in your chin or whatever. but really just sort of practice looking in the eye. And with your family members, if you don't already do this, start practicing. That's a look of confidence. And this goes right along. So look at body language. Study this a little bit. So it's going to be an APA paper, 3 references, and a couple of parts. You write a 2-part paper. The first part will be a reflection on the information you gather from Amy Cuddy's video. Make sure you study it. Listen to that. Listen to what she says, and study it. Part 2 will be a little bit of research that you've done. You can find that through our library resources here. So that's what I want to say about body language. Interview dress. So there's a PowerPoint presentation on interview dress. Write an opinion paper. You agree with the information. Were the clothes up to date and fashionable? And by fashionable, I'm not talking about the runway. I'm not talking about going to cotillion. I'm not talking about, I'm also not talking about heading down to the racetrack to watch drag racing either. So what is what do they say about the clothes? What did you agree with, and what do you disagree with, and why? Remember, these are written by people who are looking for middle-of-the-road candidates in terms of dress. If you walk into certain work situations, let's just say you're applying for a position working in a medical clinic, and you walk in and you're wearing, let's just say you're a woman, you're wearing fairly revealing clothing, you've got long fingernails, you've got piercings in eyebrow, ear, and nose. That's not going to go over well, because those are not usually allowable in that position. On the other hand, you wouldn't go in blue jeans and a t-shirt. Now, if you're applying for an IT position at a startup company of hotshot programmers, you're going to walk in. You probably can get away with slacks and a polo shirt, or maybe a collar shirt, and either short or long sleeves, and some middle of the road shoes, and you'll probably be the most dressed person in the room, because all of the guys in the programming staff are going to be wearing cutoffs and sandals and t-shirts and tattoos and piercings and everything else. So it does depend on where you go, but always dress above what you anticipate the normal work dress would be. Now, of course, if you're applying for a senior business position, it's hard to get better than a 3-piece suit. Basic navy blue with a red power tie. Hard to get better than that. You're not going to go in a tuxedo, for instance. But think about where you're going, what the people wear. If you're going in for a medical position, chances are you're going to end up wearing scrubs on the job. Don't interview in scrubs. Interview in business casual, which for men is slacks and a shirt. You may want to consider, depending on the organization, a tie and a jacket, at least a sport jacket. You're never wrong to go interviewing in a suit as a man. Okay? You can always dress down. I interviewed one time to be president of a biotech company down in Lakewood years ago. I got the job. But I was working in the pharmaceutical industry in a company that casual Friday meant you could actually wear a sport jacket over your shirt and tie and slacks. So I went in wearing my normal suit. So I had a nicely clean suit with a nice freshly pressed shirt and a tie. One of the questions was, are you going to have a dress code? Because everybody that I talked to was in blue jeans and t-shirts, including the senior scientists in this organization. And my response, I looked at him and I just laughed and said, yeah, I'm going to require that you be dressed when you come to work. And that was it. I didn't have any trouble after that. But they were afraid I was going to impose some sort of British pharmaceutical company dress code. So look at it, as I say, it's always easier to take it off than to put it on if you needed to. So again, with women, a good pantsuit or a nice skirt below the knees in length, and a good blouse, opaque, not see-through, and completely covered. With the men, you don't want a shirt that's open to the navel and showing off your bling. And with so be aware of that. So interview dress does depend to some extent on where you're going to be, but my take on it is you never are wrong to be dressed well. Do you have to be dressed expensively? Heck no, not at all. Although I wouldn't go down to Goodwill and pick up something off the rack that had a bunch of patches on it either. So look at that PowerPoint. Look at what's there, and put together your own PowerPoint of your take on interview dress guidelines. Now remember that times are changing. When I was first going into the business world, if you showed up with a bunch of tattoos on your arm and neck, chances of getting hired were not very good. These days, it depends on the situation. As I said, you go into working in some startup software firm, and you're probably going to find people that could come into work with no clothes on, and their tattoos would make it look like they were fully dressed. Bit of an exaggeration, but not far off. So what you want to think about is what are you trying to convey with your dress? And as I say, it's always better to dress up than dress down. And quite frankly, I realized that as well. I thought that that I've never been particularly bothered by tattoos, but one time living down in Denver, I opened up the Denver Post one Sunday in the business section. There was a picture on the cover of the business section of a young woman sitting in an office saying, "Would you hire this woman?" And spoiler first, my response was yes, because I knew who it was. She was the daughter of a friend of ours, and I would have hired Heidi in a heartbeat for just about anything. She was that good. The thing is that she was an aspiring tattoo artist, and she already had a degree in fine arts. And so she designed tattoos, and she designed artwork that to this day is my judge of how good a tattoo is, assuming I can see it, of course. But that's my judge. That's my basis for judging the quality of that work. So inside, they showed a picture of her at the tattoo parlor. And there she was. She had the big gauges in her ear. She had the tattoos from wrist to neckline. She had, and on her legs and everything. So she was wearing a sort of a tank top and shorts. And that's perfectly fine. But in the cover of her working at the business for her day job, she was completely covered up. If you didn't know who it was and didn't know the extent of body work, she looked like, any standard receptionist. There was not a sign. She had pierced ears, and the gauges were gone. And so it was really kind of interesting to see that picture. It made me realize that things are different. I don't find myself bothered by tattoos as long as they're tasteful, of course. Um, but I don't find myself bothered by tattoos. But a lot of people my age are offended by them. In fact, when I was growing up, the only people who had them were bikers and sailors, neither of which was respected. Today, sailors and bikers have a lot more respect than they did when I was a kid, especially when you consider that most of the bikers these days are people my age, and not tattooed. But go ahead and look at this and give me some idea um, as to what you should look like on your interview. You know, obviously that's going to vary with you. So that really understanding the issue of dress. Again, you walk in the door, your stance, your body language, your dress, they give people their first opinion of you, or their first impression. And first impressions are critical. If that first impression is bad, you are in a deep hole. If that first impression is really good, then you're standing on level ground with everybody else. And maybe even up a little, maybe on the gold medal receiving platform. So keep that in mind. Let's go to the last thing on this. And that is the thank you email. After an interview, you have to respond to the interviewer. And in fact, I will expect you to use an email on whoever does your mock interview, to send them a thank you email. Doesn't have to be complicated. Thank you very much for meeting with me. I look forward to being able to work in your company. I really enjoyed blah, blah, blah. That's all it requires, okay? Again, there are no spelling or grammar mistakes, and use the same sort of letterhead on the blank form. So be prepared to do that. It's something that is absolutely critical. If you don't send a thank you email, you go off the top of the list fairly quickly. And of course, if you walked out and you both knew that there was no way you were going to work for them, send it anyway. You have nothing to lose. A friend of mine one time made a very great point out of never burn a bridge. Even if you absolutely dislike someone, don't burn a bridge. You don't know where in your future you may run into them again. And you want them to remember you as the guy that was polite, even though we all knew he wasn't going to come to work there. So you want to leave that that's your last impression. Last impressions and first impressions are the two really defining ones that people have for those they meet. So that's what I want to say about those. Let's go back here. So we have now, for those who are missing some assignments, you need to get them into me. I'm going to be sending out emails in the next day or so reminding you that you need to do these things. This class ought to be a fairly easy one to pass because we're really prepping you for getting into the workplace. Each of these assignments that you have has a purpose for that goal, toward that goal. So if you still have things to do, including discussions, please weigh in on things. Okay, so we'll talk again on Wednesday, and start arranging for closing out the class. So, okay. So Ashley, you're online. So do you have any questions?
Yes, on the last one, on the thank you, it says that write a thank you to the company above. Is that the one that we're looking for the job? The one we've been working off of?
Would you repeat that, please?
On the thank you assignment,
Uh-huh.
it says in there that write the thank you to the company above. Is that the company that we've been applying to and working on the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what you ought to do. Practice for this company. Because you'll write, of course, a slightly different thank you note to everybody you interview. Okay. Then if you have no more questions, actually you don't need to do this, but the code word for today is Banska, B-A-N-S-K-A. Okay. Just as a way of letting you know, that's not a word I made up. That is a prefix for a number of mining towns in Slovakia where my daughter lived for a couple of years. So, but Banska, B-A-N-S-K-A. If you include that in the email, then I'll know you've listened to this class. And let's see. You're welcome, Ashley. So I will see you all on, or talk to you all again on Wednesday, and I'll look forward to receiving some of these exercises. Until then, have a good rest of the week.